Thank you for tuning into the Natty News Daily podcast. This episode is brought to you in part by our sponsor, Core Nutritionals. You can check out corenutritionals.com for all your supplement needs and use code Natty News Daily at checkout to save 20%. Enjoy the episode.
Alrighty, guys. Welcome back to the Natty News Daily podcast. We are here with Sean Sullivan, one of the leaders of the OCB, coming on to chat about the OCB in general, some of the new exciting expansion internationally. Sean, welcome to the podcast.
Gentlemen, thank you. Appreciate you having me on, and thank you for what you guys are doing for natural bodybuilding by having this podcast.
Yeah, no, we appreciate it. We appreciate your time for sure. Yeah, so why don't I think, and we talked about this a little bit off air, right? Like the big thing that I want to cover, let's talk expansion. I think this is one of the bigger pieces of news that I feel like this is actual news that I've covered, right? I cover a lot of athlete exposure and show placings,
Right.
but this was something that like kicked the hornet's nest, shook things up a bit. Let's talk about where this started, how long this has been in the works, and kind of what that process has looked like for you guys.
Right. It goes with expansion overall. And as an organization, we haven't set out on a path of expansion for the sake of expansion. Like if you look at shows that we add, even in new territories, we'll take Idaho, Boise, Idaho, for example. Had our first show in Boise, Idaho this year. We didn't look to go to Boise, Idaho. We had somebody in that area reach out to us. So if you look at areas that we expand into, you'll never see the organization being the ones that are promoting the event to try to get into a new area. We have people that do OCB shows from an area, whether it be Spain or Boise, Idaho, that would reach out to us and want to put an OCB show on. And we would go through, there's a process that we go through before we add shows. One of the things we look at is what other events are in that geographical area. We don't want to conflict with other bodybuilding organizations, particularly any natural bodybuilding organizations. And then we also look at, like what's the average number of competitors in each of those shows? If there's 2 shows in a state and each show is only getting 30 competitors, does it really warrant having another show there, just to water down the field? So we put all these things into consideration. And then we go through a very rigorous promoter interview session. So we want to, it's like a two-way street. You're bringing somebody into a team because we consider promoters part of our leadership team. They're not just off on an island. They work directly with us. They have a voice. They're part of the process. So we need to make sure that they fit in with our values and that we fit in with what they're trying to do. And we have a good communication. We build that bond of trust before we even put a show on the map. So there's a lot that goes into what we do expansion wise, besides just having somebody pick up the phone and say, hey, I want to promote for you. And okay, cool, go. Give us a sanction fee, which we don't have. We don't have those. I know some federations do, but just, do it and put it on the map. And well, then we also have to go through what we call promoter mentor, like a workshop, to make sure that they're prepared, that they have the skill sets necessary to go on. So sometimes it doesn't even the show before it even gets on the schedule has to go through that entire process. So you won't even have a promoter out there until they've been mentored, until they've been taught things like, marketing or, what to expect and a little bit of training. A lot of mentoring and a lot of preparation. Sometimes people drop out during that phase. There's a lot of things happen between flash and bang. And by the time you get to bang, sometimes it's taken 3, 6, 8 months. Out of the people that approach us, I would say maybe 1 in 3 will actually go through the process and will actually add the show. My business partner Marjorie and I, in Chad and Frank, we'll generally interview 3 to 5 prospective promoters a month. Some months, when you get closer to the end of the year, it builds up. At the beginning of the year, you have fewer people, so it's not like 100 people a year, but you know what I'm saying. It's like 3 to 5 a month on average, and we might accept 1 out of 4 because it fits all the criteria. Other people would be great for us, but they're just not in the right location, the right country, the right wherever. And it just doesn't look right. It's not the right time. So, we just let them know, hey, we love you. You're great. You have great attributes. We just had a recent promoter person approach us, I think they'd be a remarkably fantastic promoter. They have all the skill sets, love of bodybuilding, just knowledge would just really work. But they only want to go in an area where we already have so many shows between us and other federations, and we just don't want to hurt anybody. So you kind of, put people on a waiting list. So that's how we do expansion. That's kind of like the long answer. Now, how did it come about for other countries? Well, our leadership group took over from Matt Shepley about 3 years ago. So just for the quick rundown, the OCB up to that point was a sole ownership from Matt. I have been with Matt from day one. As a matter of fact, if you go back to the true roots of OCB, OCB started in 2000 as a message board back in the day. And I was one of the active moderators, and Matt and I became fast friends. We talk about, bodybuilding, and it evolved from there. So I've kind of been on from the beginning, but it's always been just like kind of like Matt was the sole owner. So about 3 years ago, he brought the four of us in. And around that time, we were looking at things that we could do to improve the OCB, not expansion. What improvements could we make? And so we started things like off-season drug testing for our pros. At any time, the pro could get a knock on the door, and we're going to do urinalysis testing. And the organization, the OCB, has spent over $200,000 this year just in urinalysis testing our pros. That's just us. That's our cut that we paid. Over $200,000 just in that. Another thing we had always talked about is it would be nice if we had an international audience, but how do you break into that? Mm-hmm. And then there were already so many federations that were very, very strong internationally that it was kind of like something we had said, hey, yeah, that would be nice. But we never really went after it. It wasn't like we were trying to find promoters anywhere, and nobody ever reached out to us. And then lo and behold, Lisa Blackburn from Australia, our Australia promoter, was a OCB athlete, became an OCB pro, did the Orton Cup, and came up to us and was like, I would love to put an OCB show in Australia. And then we really started to have to think about it, what would be the logistics involved? How would we handle that? And it took us a good 9 months just to plan, how do you export what we do here? Because we're a culture. We're not just like an organization. We are like a complete culture. Just like every organization is its own culture, we have our own culture. And how do you make that resonate in another country? How do you make sure that the drug testing standards are adhered to? Does that country even allow a polygraph? Because that's part of our process to compete for 100% drug screening. Where is there a WADA laboratory there? What other federations are there that we don't want to create conflict with if we move in? Is there a big enough? All that stuff had to be researched, and it took us a good 9 months to work out all the kinks. And then we got back to Lisa and we said, yeah, we think we can make this work. We'll do an OCB Australia show. And so we added that onto the event calendar. And then it was like the floodgates opened. Since then, we've been probably a dozen countries have approached us. And like I said, there's a process that we go to from contact to adding the show. So far, we've added Spain and England. We have many more that are in the works. You probably don't be surprised if you see 5 or 6 more pop up in the next month or two as we ferret through them. We've also turned down, and I'm not going to name names because they're still affiliated with other federations, but we've also turned down other people that wanted to come to us because they have other federation affiliations, and we will not do that. We won't cross that line. If there's somebody listening and, you happen to promote for Federation XYZ, and you want to suddenly switch to OCB, don't talk to us. We'd love to, cooperate with you. But we can't take you on because it's bad business to do that. McDonald's doesn't go in and strip out all the ownership from Burger King. So we're not going to do that in other countries. So we've already, cut a few of those out. But that is kind of how it happened. Not a lot of forethought. It was kind of like, resonating in the back of your head, kind of, yeah, be great to go international one day. The guys on Natty News Daily have it right. That's what we're missing. How do we do it? We'll get around to it in a decade or so. And then it just happened with the first promoter. And then once we went through the kinks, then it became 2, 3. Like I said, 4 or 5 more will happen in short order. And then I don't know where it's going to go from there. I tell you the truth, gentlemen, because we're not like we're not looking at a worldwide map and trying to put pieces there.
Mhm.
We always joke about the map that we put up, the orange map, trying to turn, America orange. That that's just more to show athletes in specific areas where there's going to be shows so they know they have something there. Because I promote in Massachusetts, I've had people fly in from California, from Idaho. I've had competitors from Idaho. I've had people from Seattle. I've had people from Oregon. I've had people from Texas. And they fly in, they want to try a new experience, and they come. So we know there's an interest there. And that's the only reason why we put the map up, is so that people
Mhm.
in a geographical area can go, oh, hey, West Virginia just turned orange. I live in West Virginia. Let me go look to see, I have an opportunity for an OCB show there. So we're not even looking at a world map. We're just kind of taking it one country at a time and one step at a time, and trying to grow at a rate that is practical, sustainable, logical, and fair to other organizations and fair to the athletes that we're trying to get involved in, to make sure that we have a team that will provide them the same experience in Spain and England and Australia that they're going to get in North Carolina, Massachusetts, Texas, Arizona. So it takes a lot of effort. You just can't throw it together. It takes a lot of effort and a lot of work. So a
Yeah.
long answer, but I hope I was trying to answer all prospective questions that I thought you might bring up in
Mhm.
one solid diatribe. So uh, any questions?
Yeah. No, I loved it. I loved it. And I can respect the fact that you guys are trying to do things the right way, right? Like that's one of the biggest things that I think a lot of people, if you're in the sport long enough, there's a lot of like head bashing and like he said, she said, this organization does this and that, and you don't see collaboration as much as we would like, us especially because we're kind of like athlete first, right? So for you guys to go in and we're not trying to take promoters, we're not trying to step on toes or put shows right next to another show, that I can respect because that's going to help the athlete. It's no longer pick and choose. It's the best opportunity for the athlete. I think my follow up, and Dan, if you have something before I kind of dive in further into those, you can ask right away. My question would, do you have some?
I
You
have
go.
one quick question. Is you said that, well, you kind of alluded to like most of your existing network is kind of domestic within the United States. And you have it sounds like a lot of people or potential promoters approaching you from all over the world. I guess, why are they approaching you? Are they people that have competed in the
Yes.
OCB? And that's not like, I'm curious how, why the OCB, or have they competed with the OCB? Like, because they haven't
Yeah.
necessarily had opportunities unless they traveled. And then like, why the OCB specifically are they coming to you? You
Right,
guys,
Danny,
what are,
that's a great question.
and that's very high level too. So
No,
people's,
no,
individual, yeah, might vary, but
and that is a great question. And yes, actually, even though we've never had like a foreign affiliate, so to speak,
yeah,
we have always had professional athletes from other organizations come and compete in our pro and amateur events. As a matter of fact, we've had two past the Orton Cup winners that were not from the United States. We had a bodybuilder from England, and we had a figure competitor, and I cannot remember her country of origin. So it's something that's been happening, just like
yeah,
Lisa coming over and competing. But there hasn't been that strong group of people that come over. It's been the onesies and the twosies and the threesies and the
yeah,
foursies, and we have been getting groups of people that have been coming here and competing. And we've also had one promoter group came over, and they were coming over and not to compete, but they happened to stumble on, hey, I'm visiting. I can't remember where they were visiting. And there's a bodybuilding show. I've never heard of this OCB. I'm going to go watch. And they came and they
Mhm.
watched, and they loved what they saw. And then they started talking to the promoter. One of the ownership team just happened to be there, and they started talking to one of the ownership team, and then they went onto the Instagram page, who went on to that. So as you can see, kind of how like they were exposed to it that way, and they were
yeah,
considering promoting, and they wanted to have a US affiliate to come to. And we told them, weigh out all your options, check out the other two major federations that have strong foreign interests, and see and find your best fit, because you have to find your best fit. We don't try to sell anybody on us. We say, hey, look at us, look at our culture, look at them, look at what they offer, look at them, because they might have a better fit with another federation because they have a much larger international presence and they might have a better presence in their country. A lot of factors. They might mesh better with a different ownership team. So we tell people to go out. And so that's how all of these have happened so far. We haven't just had anybody that we've accepted. We've had people that have picked up the phone and have said, hey, want to promote OCB? Let's have a Zoom meeting, and we'll sit down and have a Zoom meeting. And as you peel back all the layers of what's going on, you realize they've never been to the United States. They've never been to an OCB show. They just picked up, they just went on, internet search, and we were the next one that came up, and we were the first ones to answer the phone. Or they were affiliated with another federation, and they're looking for, hey, are you a better offer? I got a girlfriend, but I'm looking for a new girlfriend. Well, we're not your cheat buddy. So, work your issues out. So that's kind of how we have stumbled upon where we're at now. So I don't think that there's like an unlimited, untapped wealth of people out there. Like I don't think that there's people from 60 countries that compete in OCB regularly now that are all going to be calling us. We're going to expand that fast. But as far as expansion is concerned, yeah, maybe a dozen shows over the next 2 years, maybe 5 or 6 more after that, and we'll just see where it goes. But it's because they've had the exposure to us in one way or another, and then have decided, hey, we kind of like what we see. Let's talk more, and then we just talk from there.
Nice.
Very
Nice.
cool.
So I think the follow-up question is, now that you have these shows, now you run into the problem of how do you structure that, right? Because we know the
Yes.
Yorton is like the ultimate show. It's US domestic based. Obviously, these shows are going to have hopefully pros coming out of them relatively soon. Do they all immediately qualify for the Yorton? Is there now a tiered system where they need to compete in one show, go to a secondary show before qualifying? What's that structure look like for you guys?
It's going to be exactly the same that we do with our domestic. So the way that you qualify to get to the Yorton Cup is you either earn your pro card the year of the Cup. So with the Yorton Cup in September, any show from the weekend after the Yorton Cup up until the weekend before, if you win your pro card in that, you can automatically come in, because we want to provide athletes with that exposure. Our biggest thing there is it makes the Yorton Cup, like we had over 200 athletes this year. We're probably going to have 300 athletes. That's all pros. We don't have any amateurs in the Yorton Cup. That is all pros. And we realize that's a large number. But we try to make the Yorton Cup so special between the stage design and the treatment of the athletes, and everybody getting gym bags and a t-shirt and a hat. And I mean, the bling is crazy. And we try to put such fanfare into it that it could be a once in a lifetime opportunity. If it's a new pro and they have to go out and qualify by placing the other way to qualify, top 5 in a pro show, and then try to get into the Yorton Cup that way, may never happen. So we want to highlight it as a once in a lifetime experience, and then also gives the opportunity to those ringers, and we see them all the time. A couple of people that won the Yorton Cup have been first-time pro athletes. It's unusual. Usually you're a Magna McRae and you've been around for a while, and you're making your bones. But
Like Natalie this year.
Yeah, I was going to say Natalie just ran the circuit.
Last year, actually. Now it's 2024.
Yeah, last year
Natalie.
Yeah, exactly. So we have had that with the first time pros. But then the other way to qualify is to place in the top 5 in a pro event, and then you can enter. Also, the top 3 overall, not in each class, the top 3 overall also qualify for the Yorton Cup. So you won't see this past year's champions. I doubt that you would see them compete in another show this year. You may, but I would doubt that. They generally just come back. And so that's how we have our qualification, and we don't want to change things. I am very, very firm on anything that you do has to be fair, repeatable, and defendable. So if you already have a process in place that's fair, repeatable, and defendable, I'm not going to change it to have a second set of rules in another organization. So as these pros earn their pro qualification, they can come in. So let's say show in country Y is 2 weeks before the Yorton Cup next year. Their pro athletes can fly and come directly to the Yorton Cup that year. Now, what happens after that is if they don't place in the top 3, then they'll have to come to the United States and to compete in a pro show. And we haven't even, and I'm sure it's on your minds, are you ever going to have any European pro shows or, South America pro shows or wherever? I don't know. We're not there yet. We'll we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. It'll be a nice problem to have one day. But when we add pro shows, if you see the way we add pro shows, we do it structured in a certain way. So we don't have like all the categories at a show. So show promotion has to get to a certain level. And we usually use the consistent 100 competitor mark as our benchmark. Because if a show is consistently drawing 100 or more competitors every single year, and the competitors are walking away happy and satisfied, from the person who placed 8th in whatever division to the overall champion, then we know the promoters are doing a good job and they would be ready for a pro show. But the problem becomes if you add all 7 categories of pros into that one event. Now you've already got a show with 130 people. Our pro shows, we usually get between 8 and 24 people per category. So now you add all that. Now you're talking about a 2-day show. The good thing about having so many shows in bodybuilding, and I've mentioned this to you, we were talking earlier, I started competing in 1981, 82. There would be shows that you would go to that would have 150 or 200 competitors on average. That was just bodybuilders. And that was on average because there weren't a lot of shows. So now, because there's so many shows, 50 is about our average level for a show. Most of our shows get between 50 and 100 competitors. So that's about an average level. And that's still a long day. So now if you're looking at 200, 220, 230, like the Jordan Cup is now 2 days because it just is too long. And we're trying to keep the competitor experience to the point where they can come in. And the way that we run our events is, by category, beginning to end, live judged. We've done that since 2005. We started that in 2005, and we do that across the board. So now your competitor experiences, you have a report time to come in, say 11 a.m., and you're going to be done by 1 p.m. And then the next category in 1. But now when you have that many people in it, you start adding the pros, some people's report times would be 9 p.m. at night. How do you peak? Even if you're a bikini competitor, how do you peak, realistically for that? So we break up all those categories. So now if we're going to put a pro show in Europe, how do we do that? If there is, just, let's say we have, Spain and England, we don't add any more events there. Do we do half of them in Spain and half in England? Do we do them all in one? There's just all these things that need to be considered and really, really thought out before we just throw anything out there. So we have no definitive pathway now of how we're going to do that, but we do know that over time, be it 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, it's going to become a thing, and we're going to have to figure that out. But yeah, as of right now, they just meet all the same criteria, the same qualifications, the same everything from the domestic as it would be for the foreign.
Okay. And I would imagine I know the answer to this, but that also includes like all classes offered on the amateur side, right? Classic in every country. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yep. And that was the other thing that we did have a couple of promoters, prospective promoters, before we even started talking about this. When the leadership group first took over, we had a couple of countries approach us, and they just wanted to offer bodybuilding and figure. They were like, no, we like to keep everything the same. We want to make sure all those categories are offered. And if you're in a country that has no market for one of those categories, I fully understand you not wanting to, work with us and go to, another organization. That's fine. That's fine. That's great. We support natural bodybuilding as a federation, just like you guys do. All natural body. That's why we have no restrictions, no reprisals for any of our athletes, because we want them competing naturally in 100% drug tested federations, preferably, meaning that all their shows are natural, preferably, but wherever they want to go. So same thing with people who are prospective promoters, wherever you feel your best fit is, because you got to be happy. You got to be happy what you're doing. And what we need is good people that are good promoters. I mean that across the sport. You need some good, honest people with integrity that are hardworking, that care about their athletes in every federation. And if you don't come to us and you're going to go to Federation XYZ, I support you, because what we need is more of that across the board to really enhance the athlete experience.
Yeah, I think that's something that both Dan and I have, I mean, even Leroy, we've all talked about that. I think all of us have competed in multiple different federations, and we've all had fantastic experiences and not fantastic experiences. And I think it's very much promoter dependent.
Yeah.
You know, actually, one of my favorite shows is an OCB show. That's the NYS Natural with Mike Halsey.
Mike
His show
Halsey.
is
Yeah.
it's phenomenal. That was my first show I competed in, and I think probably until if it ever becomes an option where I can't, like I will probably do one of his shows every time I compete because you know what to expect. It's going to be a quality show, good athlete, fantastic venue, and he is on top of it, right?
Yep.
So, and that's just it doesn't matter the federation. It's the person that's running the show. I think that does so much of it, especially for the first time or the novice competitor, right? They don't know the politics. They don't know, or they're not even probably looking at like what the international component is or where's the major championships. They just want to step foot on the
Yes.
stage, right? So if that
Yep.
first experience is not a good one, it won't matter what those bigger pictures are because it has to matter in that day.
And that's why we take such time and such care and put such effort into new promoter selection for expansion purposes, new promoter training. And also, we also have reoccurring promoter boot camps for all of our promoters. And now that I'm retiring from the military in a few months after 100,000 years, it's going to allow me the opportunity to start doing a lot more traveling around, to go to a lot more shows. We as a leadership group are firmly not into promoter interference. We are not going to be there, counting how many heads are in the audience or whatever, because the way that we structure our shows, we're we're like that financial institution that's a fiduciary. We don't make money unless you make money. We do not stick our hands into promoters' pockets in any way, shape, or form, and we don't interfere with what they want to do. As long as things are done in accordance with our policies and our guidelines, particularly our judging, because I am very on top of the judging. One of the biggest problems that you have in the sport is twofold. One, if you're not constantly having judges in service training, if you're not constantly on top of your judges training protocols, if you're not meeting with every judge from every event before every show and having a meeting with them so that they understand the criteria and what they're doing, you're going to have judging biases in different pockets because there's going to be things that people look for. And we would see this in every organization to include the OCB. What gets voted first in Arizona is not the same as Richmond. So we've been working hard the last 2 years to correct that. And the second thing is the ever increasing level of conditioning in the sport of bodybuilding. We'll call it the ripped judging bias, to the point where if you look at certain non-tested federations, you can't really tell me what the difference is between category 1, 2, 3, or 4 for the women, or 1, 2, and 3 for the men, other than the overall mass of the competitor. Everybody's equally as conditioned and detailed. So what we did in the OCB is we stopped, break. What's the first thing that dictates category? Symmetry. That's the first thing we look at. And then what are the aspects of conditioning and size determinable upon that? And then we put that hierarchy in. So all that goes into training our judges, so that we have to make sure that that's ironed out across the board. So you get the same judging experience in Virginia that you do in Florida, that you do in Massachusetts, that you do in Illinois, and you kind of see where I'm going.
Mhm.
So all that goes into factors when we're putting our shows on and we're trying to mentor our promoters and our judges, and even bringing the coaches into the mix, because I personally believe that it's all about enhancing the competitor experience. And the competitor experience is a triad, okay? Like a little pyramid right here. At the bottom of it, you have the promoter and the organization because they provide the foundation. And over here, you have the judges, that's your right boundary. But over here, you have the coaches, and they're often forgotten about. And they're the left boundary. And if you have the federation of the promoters, the judges, and the coaches all on the same page with how we are applying the criteria for each category, what we're looking for, and what wins for OCB. We're talking OCB because I don't care what the standard is for Federation XYZ. For OCB, it's this. And the coaches have the same level of foundational understanding. They go through the same training with me. If they, as I put it out 2 to 3 times a year, put it out for coaches call, got OCB coaches, come to me. I'm going to train you on what our judges are looking for, to put everybody on the same page. And what happens with that competitor experience? It's outstanding. So like you said, only one person is going to win a category in a show. But if you have 27 competitors in a wellness category, and 26 of the competitors felt that the promoter in the organization took care of them, that they were responsive to their needs, that they listened to them, that their coach did the same thing, and that they were judged fairly, even if they placed last, they had a great experience. And whether they come back in the sport or not, at least they've walked away going, hey, you know what? That was a once in a lifetime thing. It was a bucket list item. I had a great experience, and I didn't even get the trophy. That was great. And so that's all the things. I agree with you 100%. Those are all the things that we do to try to encompass that. But particularly the judging thing, that was a big step, because it was hard to put the toothpaste back in the tube. I mean, we sat down and we started looking at our bikini competitors that were starting to look as muscular as a figure competitor. They're totally different symmetries, and they're totally different criteria for muscle definition and size. But it was starting to seep back out, so we had to kind of reel that back in, and that's an ever, that'll be a battle forever. I think I spend more time with that on a weekly basis when the season's really, hot and happening, and having all these judges and promoter meetings pre-shows and making sure everybody's ready, than anything else. But that goes into that competitor experience. If their coaches know what's going on and they're prepping them properly, and the judges don't let that unconscious judging bias of ripped seep into their hand, it doesn't go to conditioning forever. Then we can keep it in there. Now, some categories, women's physique and men's bodybuilding. That's part of it. Yeah, striated glutes is part of it. Yeah, striated glutes is not part of classic physique in the OCB. Classic means the classic era of bodybuilding, the 70s. That 70s look, early 80s look. That's classic. That's classic physique. Not striated glutes, not, cross-striated thighs and tries, So these are all the things that we work hard to try to keep under control, but it's difficult. It's very difficult.
Oh yeah.
It's a full-time job.
I give credit to all the judges. And I don't know if Leroy or Dan has, but just been approached about judging shows. And I don't think it's a job I'd ever want, because I sit up there sometimes in the stands with some of my athletes on stage, especially like bikini. And I'm just going, I don't even know. You could place top 5 or you could be in the bottom. And I've had that happen to an athlete where I'm thinking like, hey, they're looking really good. I think they fit the criteria. Conditioning's there, but not overly done. And then they place like 8, 9, where I had them like fighting in the top 5. I'm like, well, what happened there? Right. And so especially those more, we'll call everything subjective, but the more subjective classes are just tough to judge. I honestly think bodybuilding is easy, because it's like, how many characteristics can you max out, right? Like, how close to as shredded and as big as possible can you be?
Exactly. It does get into that. Bikini, out of all the categories, is inherently the most difficult to judge. But I try to go to great lengths, and I also have a team of people that assist me with this, because it's not, you don't move forward as an individual. You can go fast alone, or you can go far as a team. So I put teams of people around me to try to find the best way to articulate what you're looking for. Because if you can properly define something, then you can create the knowledge that the judge would have to apply that knowledge to create the wisdom to become a good judge. Because there's a difference between knowledge and wisdom, big difference between knowledge and wisdom. Some people, very, very knowledgeable, but if you don't take risks and if you don't apply that knowledge often enough, you're not going to gain the wisdom. And other people are very wise, but they have no idea, they're spinning maps because they don't have the knowledge to point, to direct to direct it to. So you need both. And that's what we try to do in our judging, is really be able in the training to articulate what the look is, and to utilize that as the cornerstone of the foundation to make the light bulb click, to go, now I understand the difference between 8th and 5th and between 5th and 1st. I think I got this. And there's still going to be, it's still a little bit of a learning curve with all judging panels, which is another reason why, I will certify judging panels for a lot of shows. We have promoters that have been promoting, like Mike, for 20 something years. Mike doesn't need help with his judging panel. he doesn't. You know, he's got his judges down. I just need to meet with him before the show to make sure everybody understands, you know, wellness and classic and whatever. Short meeting, good, everybody's good to go. But in other areas, we won't allow like 5 brand new judges to be on the panel because there's no wisdom there. You know, people have the knowledge, but now you got to apply it, and you kind of need help applying it. Same thing with head judges, you know, like with our head judge training. I'm now vigorously getting into the head judges training program because what defines a head judge? You know, what qualities, what attributes, what do we want from our head judges? Me personally, and when I train my head judges in the OCB, and probably almost all of our shows are this way now, you will never see first, second, third, fourth, fifth in the lineup when they're standing out there, ever, unless it's by accident. What you'll see is you'll see light groupings of athletes that are going to be on the far right and the far left. And then you're going to see athletes in the middle that are probably closer to the bottom, that are close to the people at the top. Why is it important to have, if you have 8 competitors, somebody that's in 8th place standing somewhere near the vicinity of somebody that's in 1st place, even if it's just for one call out or one comparison before you move them back around? And this is after you've defined clearly your top 5, so that that person who came in 8th will have photos on stage of them standing next to the person who came in first, so that they and their coach can sit down and go, oh, light bulb, snap, I see it now. Because judges and coaches will never have that moment of realization unless they see last place and first place side by side to clearly define to them, now I've got it. Yep, that is first. That is last. I see it. Some lineups are hard, and it's you know, first and last are that close. Try judging the Yorton Cup. Yeah, what a painful experience that is. But that's another thing that we try to do. So that goes into the training of the judges for the competitor experience to make everything better for the competitor.
No, I like it. And a lot of that comes down to the judges and the day of experience. You hinted though that you have workshops for the coaches. So
Yes.
for the coach or the athlete that's trying to ahead of time gain the knowledge, right? Talk about, and I believe the website has some pretty good examples. I'm assuming those are up to date,
Yes.
right? So why don't we talk about that, like just
Right.
as a public statement for the athlete that's watching or the coach that's watching? How do they figure out what these criteria are from you guys?
Please, 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 first and foremost, if you're coaching an athlete, don't just go on YouTube and watch YouTube videos of classic physique if you're a classic physique competitor. Please go to our website, carefully read the criteria, then look at the photographs of the athletes that we put on there. That will display the appropriate level of size, conditioning, and symmetry that we're looking for that particular category. And that should be a template for you. If you do that and you're still confused, you go to the OCB homepage and you scroll all the way down to the bottom and it says contact us. Guess who gets every single email for the OCB? That would be this guy right here. If you got a question, hey, I'm coach, I'm Coach Mike, and I got 4 people that are getting ready for an OCB show. We've only done Federation XYZ. I'm trying to understand your bikini category. Can you? Absolutely. I'm going to do a coach's training. It's going to be a 2-hour Zoom training session on this date. Tune in. I have had coaches call me and tell me, hey, listen, I am 2 weeks out and I have a bikini competitor and I'm confused about how lean to bring her in. And I will say, call me. You're 2 weeks out. You don't have time to wait 3 months for me to do another thing. Call me and we'll sit down and we'll talk it out. Or we'll do a Zoom meeting because I have storyboards. I have a computer filled with storyboards because pictures tell a story. And, there'll be pictures of athletes that are far too shredded for bikini and far too big for bikini and just right for bikini. That picture determines it. And then with each storyboard, there is basically a description that allows somebody to articulate what it is. Okay, boom. Now I can take the visual, I can put it into words, because words create thoughts, thoughts create actions, actions create deeds. And what's the deed that you want? Judges judging the right way. You want the coaches coaching somebody into the correct standard, and you want the competitors preparing properly. So there's nothing worse for me when I'm at an event, if I judge, and having somebody come up to me and go, why didn't I win? I won the last 9 shows. And I would tell them, if you were in bodybuilding, you would have won your pro card tonight, but you were third based on this. And they don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear it. That's why when I use feedback, I go right back to our categories and our descriptions, and I use that as my defining guide. I don't shoot from the hip and say, your tan or your glutes, or, you get a lot of judges feedback sometime, where it's, the same buzzwords over and over again. No, you take the individual, you go to the criteria, and you utilize the criteria as they're defining them. And sometimes it's sad to say, so many times I've had this happen. It is just opinion comes down to when it's a 4-3 split decision. And you guys have been competing. You guys have been around the sport a lot. You've seen that 4-3 split decision. Why did competitor X get it over competitor Y? Listen, it was a 4-3 split decision. What the hell does that mean? It means that you could send them home and bring them back in 4 hours, and it would be the other way. And then you could bring them back 4 hours after that, or you could freeze their conditioning and have everybody go home and eat and come back, and it would flip-flop 15 times. Sometimes it just is what it is. But a lot of times it's clearly definable, and you can utilize that criteria to show them where they got lost. But this is why we want to train the coaches, particularly as we branch into new areas, because they're coming in with a preconceived that, yeah, I know how to prep that. I've been doing it for 25 years. We're a little different. Especially since we've really started to try to hone in on that. There's a hierarchy of conditioning, bikini, wellness, figure, women's physique. So there's a hierarchy of that. And we need to make people understand that. And then that lets them slide their athletes into the correct category, first and foremost. So.
Mm-hmm. Now, has there ever been any consideration, transparency in judging is a challenge. We like to give the feedback, but as you said, like even sometimes the feedback is athletes sometimes, especially if they're in the sport long enough, don't even go for it because they kind of know like you said, the buzzwords. Has there ever been a consideration to actually release the judges' scorecards to the public or to the athletes so they can actually look round per round, where was I, who said what, and why? It's something that I think some of the athletes have discussed a little bit, but I haven't heard it too much from any of the federations.
No, I really haven't given that really any thought, because I very rarely get asked for a scorecard, and if I'm asked, I share it. Yeah, here you go. Now I'll eliminate the judges' names.
Right.
I will not give them the judges' names. But another thing that we do in the OCB, as like every federation I know of, no matter how confusing their scoring is, because there's some federations they put so much into other than just like with us, it's just a numerical placing. 5 people on stage, one person's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You put the number down and you're done. Because I've competed for everybody. I've judged for everybody. I've had some where I have to come up with 3 different numbers. I've had others where there's this and then there's this much for that, and it's the square root of pi, and it gets all confusing or whatever. But whatever that's being done, when you get down to the raw score, what's your check and balance on those judges? So what I've been doing for the last 3 years, is every single promoter after the show has to send me the tabulation sheets. I then look at the tabulation sheets with the judges' names. First thing I look for is anomalies. If everybody had somebody first and you had them fourth, I'm going to start hunting around. Just as well as being in the military, I was a cop for 25 years. I was a detective for a long time. So I love solving puzzles. I'll pop onto a social media account. Oh, look at that. You're best friends with so-and-so. And, that gives rise. Now that hasn't happened. I'm just using that as an example, but I look at those. So I look at every single scorecard and I grade the judges. So judges will be graded on the end score, and we look at a variance of a +1 or +2. This is actually something Matt Shepley came up with. He was brilliant with these things, but as a way to consistently score the judges. And then I have my judges roster, and everybody gets assigned a score. So when it comes time to pick judges for pro shows, and particularly for the Jordan Cup, we look at the most accurate judges. So it's just like your ref in the NFL. And we're picking our referees for the Super Bowl. How do they pick them? Well, they look back at the referees that were the most accurate with all their calls for that particular position for the year, and same thing. So that's what we do. So when I see inconsistencies in a panel and I see these splits, it allows me to go back and to assess who needs further training. A lot of times it's a training thing, or whatever. But I will share those cards when I eliminate the judges' names off the top if somebody asks, because you have a right to it, and that's part of transparency. But as far as just going and publishing and posting them, we haven't considered that. The other thing is when you do something like that, for every action, there's always an equal and opposite reaction. And what would the reaction be? Another thing that we would be guarded against is like putting out, a lot of competitor information, putting it out there and stuff like that. So it's a thought. If we could figure out a way to make that work in the future, yeah, maybe we would do it. But as of right now, when in doubt, ask me. So
No, fair enough. No, and I think a lot of people listening will be pleased to hear about all the stuff that you guys do for the judges and the way you're checking them. And it's not just who's friends with who. All right, you always judge my show. That there is some accountability pretty much for the judges, I guess, is what I'm looking to say. So no,
yeah.
I like that. I think a lot of people will like to hear that.
And I do have to say one thing about judging and conspiracies and whatever. The old um it was a setup and that person was deemed to win or whatever. There's rumors that go around bodybuilding. These have been around since the 80s. I judged my first show in 1987. My first show was an NPC show out in California. It was the first show I ever judged. I've been judging ever since. These rumors have been swirling almost at every show. What I can tell you, maybe it's just me. Maybe it's because everybody always said, that's the Boy Scout in the group. Don't do it around him, or he's going to rat us out. I don't know. But whether it's been NGA, WNBF, INBF, INBA, USBF, OCB. My God, I know I'm forgetting probably 5 or 6 federations before you guys were born. ANBC was the biggest one that was out there. I've judged for all of them multiple times a year. I would probably judge 15, 20 times per year before I was even involved in this ownership group or with the OCB as a promoter. 15, 20 years, 20 shows per year, all federations. I have never been on a panel where we were told or somebody did something hijinks to make somebody win. What have I seen? Numerical errors that went unanswered. Somebody put the wrong score down or they made a mistake, and all of a sudden it's like, oh crap, we don't want to be embarrassed, so we're not going to own that. So we just kind of like let that slide. I have seen judges with assumptions because a judging panel will get put together and they just, hey, are you a judge? Yeah, I judge for, XYZ Federation. Well, come judge here this show for today. Totally different standards, totally different look what they're looking for. I've also seen where promoters have tried to bring panels in from around the country. And like I said, there would be unconscious judging biases between the way somebody would look at somebody from the West Coast to the East Coast to the South to the North, and it would create inconsistencies. I saw all those things. I never once had somebody that I've seen change scores or predetermine a winner from any of the legitimate natural federations. And I specify the legitimate natural federations. I have seen none of that at any time. But I hear about it all the time. Oh yeah, they sandbagged that person because they did this or they did that. I don't know, maybe they did. But I can honestly tell you I've never seen it. And if I did see it in an OCB event, it would be handled most Ricky Tick. And that's another thing. And I tell people this all the time when it comes to that transparency, and I just brought it up. At least one event per year, at least one that I'm at, and I probably go to about 30 to 40 events per year. So I get out there a lot. At least one event per year, either one that I am at or that somebody calls me about, has a situation where, crap, there was a tabulation error. That person was supposed to be 8th. They messed the number up, whatever, and they've got him in 1st. What do we do? Break. Everybody leave the stage. You bring them back out in the proper order. You own it. Whether it's good or bad, you own it. And we as an organization own it. And it happened at the Yorton Cup 5 years ago. where we had to pull the men's classic physique competitors off the stage because Matt Shepley and I stood there and went, that's wrong. And we went down, we got the tabulation sheets, we saw they made the error, and we pulled it out. And the person who thought one was one of our key promoters was actually fourth. So that is what you need to step up and do. And that is why I look at all the tabulation sheets, because if I see one of those errors, people get phone calls. Hey, listen, I regret to inform you that you thought you were first, you were third. Hey, I'm happy to tell you that you thought you were third, you are first. If I were there at the event and we catch it at the event, stop, you come off you. And I get hate mail. I have had the parents of somebody last year that I did it to at a show sent me hate mail. Now, I explained to them, your daughter was eighth. She thought she won, and she thought she should have won her pro card, had that been the case. She's nowhere near ready. Was it fair for her? No, but you embarrassed her. No, we did the right thing. And if I'm at a show, we always have that meeting with the competitors beforehand, pull everybody in. Hey, if this happens, we're going to do this. We're going to do this. Coaches, you understand that. Not to embarrass anybody. Integrity of the process. First and foremost, we got to get it right. If there's an error, we own it. You own it. And you learn from it. Because, you don't know who you are when you have a perfectly run show in an organization. You only know who you are as a person and what your character is when something goes foobar and you have to recover from that. So, that's another thing that's big for me. So that's something I have seen with all these, fixed, the show is fixed. No, I don't think I've ever seen any event that if you peel back the onion far enough in natural bodybuilding, if you peel back the onion far enough that somebody actually got shellacked or set up or whatever, I think there's usually an articulable situation that happened. And then that's my job when those things happen, that they're corrected, that the training takes place, and that they don't happen again.
I like it. Dan, any follow-ups on that one?
No, I think that's good, and I think especially owning it is, I commend that. I mean, because to a certain degree, you're almost like self-embarrassing yourself when you're admitting it, but you're getting it right, and that's important to get it right at the end of the day, to judge fairly and to judge, get the rankings and the scores right. So no, I commend you guys for doing that. And I have heard and seen some shows that that have, or at least one comes to mind that did happen. So like you said, it is kind of, or you kind of mentioned, I mean, it's kind of unfortunate for the person that gets that phone call, but it's, do you want them to, think that they took first when in reality they didn't,
Right.
So.
And I prefer to do it face to face. If I'm there,
Yeah.
if they only get the phone calls, if it's really like flew under the radar and nobody caught it.
Yeah.
And then I'm going back and I'm looking at the tabulation sheets and I'm re-adding the math and I'm going, wait a minute. This math isn't right, and I'm like going back and I'm punching everything back in again. And then I'll look at all the scorecards and I'll make sure that the scorecards right. And I go through all that and I go, oh crap. But if you have that oh crap moment when the show is live, it's got to be taken care of then and there. It's got to be taken care of then and there, because if followers of all types, whether they're people that are following an athletic organization or your followers doing your podcast or whatever, followers truly only have four needs. And one of them is trust. And if they lose trust in you or your processes, they're not going to come back. So out of the four follower needs, trust is number one, and you have to maintain that trust. And owning your errors and making sure those corrections are made goes a long way. I mean, even that poor girl whose parents still hate me still competes in the OCB because after she got through the sting, she realized we did it right, and she's working her way up the ladder. She's probably going to be a good pro one day. But those things matter. And had that error not been corrected and people had that speculation, we would have lost 6 competitors instead of me getting a couple of poignant emails, and a competitor feeling a little down for a few minutes, but then figuring out I need to regroup and come back stronger and harder. And that's exactly what she did, and is still doing. Yeah.
Nice. And I think that the fact that the athlete's still within the organization shows the probably respect that you showed, right, in the communication. And that's what athletes want. They want to feel respected, right?
Right.
So as long as that's there, they have the trust. People make errors, and most people, I won't speak for everybody because there are some that are a little more intense than others. Most people will understand that and be able to move on from it if an error was made, right? We're all human. So I want to be respectful of your time for sure. We're just over an hour
Absolutely.
here,
Oh,
especially.
wow.
Yeah, we kind of dove into that one. So I want to leave the listeners with the message, a big view, goals, whatever it is that the leadership team of the OCB wants the general population, or at least our demographic, to understand or look forward in the future. What do you guys have on the pipeline, or what do you want to leave the listeners with?
Um, that as an organization, the only thing that we're competing with is ourselves. So we're always trying to build a better mousetrap. The ownership group and I believe that, being part of the ownership team is continuous process improvement, self-inspection and self-awareness. So if you come to one of our events or you're part of one of our events and you see something, or you have questions, whatever, feel free to ask questions. We will answer questions. I answer questions all the time. I don't mind. Uh, and we will try to give you the why, because I think it's important for competitors to understand, the why. Why did this happen, or why did that happen? Um, and I think it's important for them to understand the why. Now, sometimes we can't give them the why because there might be legalities involved. I mean, a failed drug test. Yeah, we can't even talk about that until it goes through the entire process. We have a hearing process we do with that as well. I mean, we do it per WADA guidelines. If you go on the WADA website and you read what they say, suspension times need to be, whether it's 3 months for this or 5 years for that, and the process that you have to go through, and having, second sample tests. And all, we have to do all that. We can't talk about it until everything's done to the end, and then we can't release a lot of information. But if it's just like, well, why aren't your men's classic physique competitors as shredded as, the current, pro whatever? Because we have our own standard, and we'll explain it all out. And the other thing is people bring up all the time, the the battleground that seems to be natural bodybuilding. Um, yeah, we're trying to get away from that too. I don't think you guys could find any time where this ownership group has been in the media bashing any organization, or defending ourselves if somebody accused us of anything, or anything like that. Um, we we just stay out of that. But we want to make it clear that we don't stay out of it because, we feel that we're above anybody, or that, it's like we're not trying to do it. It's just because it just adds to more unnecessary drama. And there's just enough drama going around already. That if you are a federation head and you have a question about the OCB, don't speculate why we do something. Reach out to me. I mean, if you listen to my podcast, I've had Nancy Andrews on. I mean, I've just had Philip Ricardo on. Different federations, different whatever. They're my honored guests. Kemp Beerley just won my pro show. He owns a competing federation. I mean, how much more cooperative can you get than that? Um, so anybody out there, if you ever have questions, just ask. Just ask. We'll explain it. There's no, wall of secrecy. We would rather build wells than walls.
I like it. I think it's a perfect way to end it. Dan, you want to wrap her up?
Yeah. Where can people find you?
I can be found on Instagram. Best way to get me. I have now become an Instagram guru. I am SulCop96 is where I'm at on Instagram. So just go SulCop96 or hashtag that. Easy to find me there. Or if you want to shoot me an email, just go right onto the OCB website. If you go down to the bottom where it says contact us, you're really contacting me. It doesn't go to 4 people. I answer the mail. And I'll ferret it to the right person with the ownership group, but you would get me first.
Awesome. Appreciate you coming on, taking the time and going through all the the nitty gritty of what goes on within the OCB and your thought process behind a lot of your perspectives.
No, appreciate the time. And, like I said, guys, I appreciate what you're doing for natural bodybuilding. So, keep it natural and keep it going.
Thank you, Sean. Appreciate your time.